So we got authorization added, we got authentication added. Our app is really working quite well. If there wouldn't be one issue, whenever I log in and I reload, I'm logged out again. And this is really not that great. It would be nicer if we could stay authenticated so that if we reload, we already are in the authenticated state again. At least if our token is still valid. It expires after 1 hour, so we'll have to relog in thereafter anyways. But for that hour, if we reload the page, we should keep our authentication status. And that implies one important thing. Storing it on the front end, just in context, isn't enough. Because where is data stored that you store in your React context? Well, in the end, just in memory. It's stored in a variable in JavaScript in the end. It's stored in memory, and whenever you reload the page, in the end, the entire React app restarts, you could say. A page reload is like your React app restarting or starting it for the first time. And that in turn means that any memory allocated to your old React app is basically lost. So the token stored in memory is lost when you reload the page. So to have it survive page reloads, we have to store it somewhere else than in memory. And that is what we'll do now. To store the token somewhere else in memory, in app.js, when we do log in and we set the token therefore, I want to store it in a more permanent storage as well. And the browser got a couple of storage mechanisms. We can find them in the browser DevTools here actually if we go to the application area. There you find things like localStorage, sessionStorage, IndexedDB, and cookies. Now IndexedDB is a quite complex database which we don't want to use for such simple data as a token. SessionStorage is a bad storage because it's cleared whenever you close the browser. LocalStorage is great because there you can easily add and remove and manage data from JavaScript, and it survives browser restarts and page reloads. And cookies are also great, but not as easy to use from inside JavaScript. So we will use localStorage to store the token. And now here is one important note. Some people are concerned about the security of localStorage because you can easily write to it and read from it with JavaScript, which actually is the advantage we want to use here. It has an easy to use API. Cookies could be locked down to be not accessible from inside JavaScript, and instead we could set them with the help of some server-side headers. Now this adds extra complexity on the server side, but the most important problem with that is you have some fake security. The problem some people have with localStorage is that because it's easy to access with JavaScript, if people get access to your page through a cross-site scripting attack, they can also read and write to your storage and they can steal the tokens. Now here's the error many people who have this thought process make. It's true, if your React application here is vulnerable to cross-site scripting attacks, people can steal the tokens of your users. But here's my point. If your app is vulnerable to cross-site scripting attacks, you have different problems anyways, because the attackers can send HTTP requests to the backend on your behalf, and they could attach any cookies that the users of your app have anyways, so they can still get fake access to your backend even without stealing the token explicitly. So in general, of course, you have to build an app that does not expose cross-site scripting attack vulnerabilities, and our app here, for example, should be pretty secure. Also because React by default sanitizes anything you output and you render to the screen. So all the user-generated content we're storing in the database, when we output it on the screen with the help of React, then it's sanitized by React. So we have built-in cross-site scripting attack protection here. And unless we do something non-React-ish, we should be pretty safe therefore. So this shouldn't be a problem for us, and therefore we will use localStorage to store our token. That means here, when we log in and we get the token, we can access localStorage like this. This is a globally available object in JavaScript. It's a global JavaScript browser API. And we can add a new entry with setItem. And here the entry I want to create is actually called user data. So not just token, but user data. And in there, I will store a stringified, a JSON stringified object. Because to localStorage, you can only write text or data that can be converted to text, like numbers. Objects cannot be stored, But with JSON stringify, of course, you can turn an object into text, because JSON in the end is just text which looks like an object. So that is a way of storing an object in local storage. And here I want to include my user ID, so that UID I'm getting on a user ID key, and that token. I will store both in local storage with this command. If I now save this, and I do log in here, this succeeds. But if I now have a look at my application area, you see that there, in local storage, you have that user data entry, and that's the value for it. And that is JSON data. It looks like an object, but it's really just text. But with JSON stringify and also another method on that JSON object, we can convert it back and forth to and from JavaScript objects. So now we got our data stored here. Now that alone, of course, doesn't log us in automatically when we reload. But now we can use that stored data to log the user in when he reloads. So let's do that as a next step.